ladies and gentlemen, distinguished leaders who are also participating today. Well, this presentation, as our V. Suresh said, is about a very unique set of innovations that Dr. Ajit Sapnis has created over years. His story is itself unique in many ways and has not been heard or implemented. About 2 years ago, within the IGBC, I was requesting people to see how he could be offered a decent slot for a presentation that would bring a great deal of learning for civil engineers and for architects, but that hasn't happened, and post-COVID, you know where we are. Discussions and green building forums have largely been on energy, water, waste management, and such things. Many professionals who profess to work on energy efficiency don't even work on waste management, you know, if you ask me. Construction and the massive quantities of abuse of the environment with materials is largely ignored, as our V. Suresh also just now said. This effort today is an attempt to sensitize architects and engineers and contractors to address this major cause of abuse that construction materials account for. And well, I will only take another, say, 3-4 minutes to give you an example of this. 1 cubic meter is roughly about, as you all know, about 35 plus cubic feet. About 15 cubic feet of sand and 30 cubic feet of aggregate is required to prepare that 1 cubic meter of concrete, if it is M20. 1 lakh square feet needs of an apartment or of an office building or whatever needs about 4,300 to 4,500 cubic meters of concrete, depending upon the structural efficiencies your professionals are bringing to play. This is at the level of sand about 1,900 cubic meters. Now, if you are smart enough as young students, these numbers will not be lost upon you. Now, the aggregate quantity will be about 2,800 cubic meters to this 4,200 cubic meters of concrete. Cement required is about 350 kgs, no more than about 7 to 8 bags. Let me tell you just one story before I hand over the mic to V. Suresh. At just 1 foot of a riverbed thickness, or about 0.3 meters, this means about 600 square meters or 0.6 square kilometers of surface of a riverbed that is taken away for one building of 1 lakh square feet. You do your math after this session is done. Think about it. If you took just 1 million square feet of such construction, and you know there are many builders who are building 1.2 million square feet at this point of time in many cities. If you took that, that will mean about 6 square kilometers of a river sand bed at that 1 foot or 0.3 meters that is taken away for concrete that a building of that kind of 1 million square feet needs. If you took a river of say 100 kilometers in length, running just 1 kilometer wide at an average, then about 16 million square feet of such buildings can be constructed if we took away just 1 foot of the riverbed's thickness. This is the damage, ladies and gentlemen, that we are doing to our riverbeds. There's a ban on sand mining, as most of you know, in most states, but you and I know also of the numbers of trucks of sand that are still mined from rivers. Governments condone it because it means tax revenues. Builders love it, for their business depends on it. And in the name of job and employment, we destroy forever things that your grandchildren will never have. Rivers and streams are often considered major features within a landscape. However, they actually only cover around 0.1% of the land, of the entire land on Earth. They are made more obvious and significant to humans, to all of us, by the fact that many cities and civilizations are built around fresh water supplied by rivers and streams. Streams exchange water, nutrients, organisms, etc. The riverbed is the lifeblood of the river. And you know what we need to be doing. There are no simple solutions anyway. M-sand, for example, is an alternative industry that now uses. But that is another story for another time of how we destroy massive granite mountains, which form, again, less than 0.5% of the world's land surface for building these monstrous things that we use for offices and homes and hotels. Is this sustainable? By just bringing efficiency in buildings with less resources of sand and aggregate and limestone, do you think we will do anything but just reduce sustainability? Do you think we will create sustainability? Do we need just green enterprise integration, or do we want actually to be doing transformation? Well, that's all from me. On that somber note, I will hand the mic over to V. Suresh.
Yeah, very happy good evening to all the distinguished participants for the Living Building series. And let me greet both Dr. Chandra Hariharan and Dr. Ajit Sabnis, who is going to be the bridegroom of the day, going to speak on this very interesting theme, very rarely heard of theme. As a matter of fact, I did a Google search. In all the green building one for the last 20 years, we never had one program on green construction. So green construction is a topic which is very important, but very rarely attempted to open out and speak on. And to that extent, I want to congratulate Chandra for identifying a theme of this nature and also under the PJMT there. So when you talk of that, Payal, special greetings to you. I'm very happy that R.K. Somani Saab and Jaimini Saab is also with us among various other people who are participating. Your gracious presence is a great source of encouragement to all of us. Now, we are at a very, very important time where buildings, infrastructure, and the environment are inextricably linked over there. So you require the energy, the materials, water, land, and human resources, equally important, are all consumed in the construction and operation of buildings and infrastructure. And green construction, therefore, aims to create a balance between what we seek to build and what our environment can ultimately support. I think about which very briefly in the short time, he talked of the amount of things sand you're going to take out from the whole area, mining and all that. That's more important. What our environment ultimately support is the most important thing we have to deal with in a very large way. At the end of the day, creating structure and processes that are environmentally responsible and resource efficient is most important throughout the building life cycle, right from the cradle to grave approach, including the use of that. And therefore, your raw material, energy, water, and we have to fight against the global warming concerns and the CO2 emissions, how we can bring down, including the embodied energy, very important for building material selection. We have to minimize the waste and other pollutants over there and maximize whole life cycle performance. And if we have this in our, major aim to do the particular construction in a large way, we would have achieved what we want to achieve. Now, green construction has been receiving global attention also in a big way, more so in the last around 4-5 years time period. I've been reading some good literature on this particular topic. They identified a large number of things on elements of green construction over there in a structured manner. That's what I like. And they covered that in the context of the materials to be elected, the construction of waste management, the amount of quality of the environment of the workplaces, including the air quality, as well as energy efficiency, water efficiency, and other related features to be done. They have identified all this into a very large way. And therefore, when we try to do that in the Indian context, I am trying to see how best we can try to cover in the short possible time. I'll make it as fast as possible. The idea is building and construction alone responsible over 39% of the carbon footprint reduction. Out of 28% is for the actual use for energy use for heating. We'll leave that. On the embodied energy itself is about 11% coming on that. In India, slightly is lower than the global average figure because we use a little more of the local resource material, and some of our things like cement sector, Indian cement sector has done extremely very well because of the process improvements, the amount of embodied energy and CO2 reduction is substantially reduced in a very large way. But what we are trying to do is what can we do at the larger global level? We should not worry so much about that now, but I'm sure series of effort that we do will also lead to that particular thing. Like UNEP in 2009, 2016, they identified large number of areas by which the emissions of savings for the building material side, and they have identified this is going to the largest. UNEP has identified building sector as the largest potential for significantly reducing the greenhouse gas emission compared to any other major emitting sectors. And mind you, this has come over there nearly a decade back, and they identified how much can this be reduced in a large level. Our own effort in the Indian Green Building Council effort for building the overall impact, when you do all those inputs on the planning design, including construction, around 40 to 50% saving of energy, and about 20 to 30% of water saving is coming. But green construction, when you talk of dealing with that, is a holistic concept. And that starts with the understanding that the built environment can have profound effects, both positive and negative, on the natural environment, as well as people who later on inhabit in the area. Now, what can benefit is not only economic, social, and environmental, which are largely known to most of the distinguished audience here, each one having its own implication there. But where I want to deal with is right at the selection process, the selection of your architect and your engineering team right in the beginning of design of the building itself. Half the job is already taken care of. Anything you want to do in construction, on green construction there, not when you start construction over there at the project site, Bhumi Pujan ke baad. No, it's already on the drawing table around 6 months back. They already have decided what is going to be the various materials that are going to be used over there for your walling, your roofing, your flooring, your water, your plumbing, etc., etc. So first major component is on the material component itself, which, as I said, very important. They should be durable, long life, does not have to be replaced quickly. Metals high recycled content should be there. Low VOC, less formaldehyde based composite wood or free etc. And also FSC certified timber, as well as both locally resourced material. So all these things will come in a very large way. And therefore, when we deal with that, so design issues itself, large number of things are done. The passive design of the building itself, larger amount has already come. But I'm not talking about the systems on air conditioning, because that's not construction, that is installation. So on construction side, therefore, you would like to see how best you have a system by which use certified material and our own Green Pro product. Around 40 are covered, about 1,000 certification has come, which also brings in the least amount of energy component for this in terms of the product design, raw materials, manufacturing process, product performance, till the disposal and recycling is done in a large way. For example, the GGBS, the ground granulated blast furnace slag, or the M-sand about it, Chandra mentioned about artificial aggregates component as an important one. Your major problem of getting the construction sand there. Therefore, the embodied carbon in buildings can be reduced by the green products, not only for steel, concrete, cement, and construction. You'll be surprised to know, just by using the one term of green concrete alone. He talked about METQ. I like the definition that he started. And right or wrong, I have some interesting information on that. Just by using the green concrete, high recycled content, and supplementary cementitious material have 25% less embodied carbon over the conventional concrete, which otherwise emits about 350 kg of carbon dioxide per metric cube of concrete. Every metric cube of concrete that you produce, ladies and gentlemen, you are responsible for 350 kg of CO2 emission. So if you can bring it down by another about 25% or 30%, it's a phenomenal. Similarly, use of recycled steel can reduce the CO2 emission up to 70% as in comparison to conventional steel, which produce about 2.8 kg of carbon dioxide for equivalent ton of the material coming over there. And composite cement, Portland slag cement, Portland pozzolanic cement, all bring down the embodied energy in a very large way to the extent of 56% as against ordinary Portland cement. So therefore, the selection is already decided earlier by the architect engineering team, has already done that. And then use AAC, autoclaved aerated blocks you want for insulation, or other materials for reducing the heating load and the cooling load in the building in a very large way, can also contribute in this particular aspect in a very, very big way. And therefore, we have to also ensure that by using this particular one, the recycled content, the circular economy will play an important role. Construction, demolition waste is going to be a very major component, and every project site has got the problem on that. Maybe since we are doing fresh construction, demolition will not be an issue. Even construction waste is going to be an important component on the sustainability of the building in a large way. Again, using the construction processes. What type of construction process are we going to have in that? Is it in situ construction, or maybe partial prefab component and modular construction, drywall construction, where you have less amount of water, interlocking block to be done, again, or using treated water for construction. When I'm sitting in the EIA meeting every time, all the recycled water, we say, where will you take beyond what you give it to the construction sector on the neighboring side? So we always say, how do you do that? But they can ensure this particular thing, provided the quality of the water is good for concrete, construction or masonry construction or the curing and other related things. Use of plasticizers and super plasticizers, which help you in setting time in a very large way, can also be a very major aspect which can come in your overall construction component coming. And of course, the construction needs a lot of water and energy right from the particular thing. How do you bring that down is a big challenge, and especially you should never waste that particular component there. And even to get the construction power in the beginning during construction phase is a higher cost than the normal power cost that's come. So use that using renewable features as much as possible, and use all those lighting fixtures, because you have to light the whole area, construction area. You got to keep all this in a very large way. Renewable energy can be a very major area which can come at the construction site. Many people have done right in the beginning in a large way. But end of the life phase is important. Demolition waste, actually C&D waste for new projects can be as much as 40 to 60 kg per square meter. If it is demolition included, it's about 300 kg, 300, 500 kg per square meter of if you do that particular thing. So imagine that particular amount of waste. How can we do that? Be it concrete or brick or wood or timber or roofing or drywall construction. How do you use that? There is a Ministry of Environment Forest has brought out a very interesting document on waste management of construction and demolition waste. I hope you, that is now being strictly enforced in large number of sites in a very large way. That brings me to the most important component of one of the important resources are the workers. All these migrant workers, Corona has shown the large number of workers which are in all our project sites which are there. Their health and well-being is an important component, and we got to have all the green practices coming in this particular area. Health and well-being, E&H component through ISO 9001 or 14001 for EHS, very important. And also 18,001 for OSAS, which deals with the complete safety in construction practices, so that during construction you don't have any problem in the health or accidents or death of any of the people. Equally important component to be looked after. And therefore, from that point of view, the health well-being of all the people at the construction site, normally a 2.5 years time period, most of the sites, maybe some of the 3 years even, their own living places, their sanitation facilities, water to drink, etc. are equally important green practices. Let me tell you, internationally they are giving substantial amount of points for any green construction. Incidentally, there are green construction ratings which are coming now. All of the last 5 years, I thought I should bring it. In addition to green building rating, there is a new construction system, that's the rating system, what is called green construction rating. And there they are giving importance to all these areas in a large way, and therefore we would like to see how best we can take this forward. That will bring us to one more dimension of taking care of the energy, water and waste component towards the net zero one. Even though the end effect will come towards the end of it, I would like to close that with this particular message on, that's also an area on net zero energy, net zero water, net zero waste and net zero carbon.
We have discussed it. We have covered it in the past. So maybe you want to keep it brief.
In conclusion, what I would like to say is that green buildings during construction has to set new benchmarks. We are not doing that. If you ask me personally, having been in the sector for the last 55, even in a project site in a large way, I wouldn't give more than 5 out of 10. Not more than 5 out of 10 for India's construction practices. Whether are they good from the green construction point of view? No. 5 in good, organized, good builders, good developers, good construction companies. They are otherwise still lower. So we got to have the raising the benchmarks for use of resources, as well as reducing consumption of the material, as well as the use of alternate material. We should also try to see how best they deal with national, international standards, be it the NBC or ECBC, and using certified product in a large way. And green construction managers, green procurement policy are the last two components to close it. If it will make it happen as a part of process, you got a green procurement process, green construction process, and as I said, green construction managers.
Let's hope,
On that note, positive note, I want to stop. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Thank you so much. And before I hand the mic over to Dr. Ajit Submissive, let me tell you that he's a friend of some years and he's an amazing guy. You'll see when he speaks. Let me acknowledge the presence of Jeet Kumar from Chandigarh. He's the charter chairman for ITBC there. Leela Prasad from Visakhapatnam.
Oh,
Mrs. is always there, quiet and silent. Vasant Kini, who is a CEO, very, very keen on understanding these things. Of course, our stalwart and chief patron of the IGBC, Padhu Padmanabhan, is here today along with us. Sri Sri University, Nitya School of Architecture, some people from Mangalore, Niranjan Khatri, our dear old friend, another old green champion. All of them are here today. Thank you for being here. Over to you, Sabnis. And before I do that, all of you students, let me remind you, every time you look at a building which is about 100,000 square feet, think of how it's taken away about 600 square meters and 1 foot of riverbed sand if they have used riverbed sand. And if they have not used riverbed sand, they have gone and used crushed granite or what you call manufactured sand or M sand today. What are those technology innovations? What are innovations that you can bring to see that you are making smarter use of such natural resources is what Dr. Ajit Sabnis is going to speak to you about today. Over to you, Ajit.
Yeah. Good evening. Can I share my screen? I think I'll start right
away. Yes, please. I think you should do that yourself. There you are. Can you put it on the view mode, please?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's come on.
View mode, Ajit. Ajit on the view mode, if you don't mind. Great. And I'm going to mute myself.
Yeah.
The floor is yours entirely. Thank you.
Yeah. Good evening, participants, and good evening, Suresh sir and Hariharan sir. I'm extremely happy to note that the two experts whom I have revered as my guides, they're all here today. Both of them are here, and then their contribution in the field is enormous. Both of them, in essence, have touched upon quite a few points which I wanted to add. And Suresh sir has elaborately touched upon the construction aspect and the green construction aspect of one of the facets. Now, I am going to touch upon the principles of green construction, or at macro level, the principles behind sustainable construction. You know, actually the two words, green building and sustainable building, have become synonyms nowadays. However, there are quite a few subtle differences. Let me keep the differences very short. We all know that sustainable development is founded on three pillars, namely social, economic, and the environmental. The green building design primarily addresses the pillar of environment, whereas the sustainable buildings encompass all the three pillars, and it has got a longer approach. Here, each stage of the design process is optimized and aimed to reduce negative impacts and to improve the quality of life without depleting the natural resources. When it comes to sustainable design, the main intent, so to say, is not to build a structure, but to build the future. We shall understand as we proceed what I say. And today's title being the principles behind the principles of green construction, but actually at macro level, I personally opine that the principles of sustainable construction and green constructions are almost identical or have been integrated. Hence, I would like to take a larger picture. I would like to take a macro perspective and then go quickly and rush. I have about 35, 40 slides, which I will go very quickly. And the next slide, which this is just to bring you, we are all aware of the sustainability development goals, the 17 sustainability development goals, and 500 and odd targets, goals, voluntary disclosures by almost 195 countries, and the planetary boundaries, the limits, the tipping points, all these phenomena which have been actually come into the picture nowadays. And we are all talking about that. When it comes to construction industry professionals and sustainability development goals, the slide what you see, there are majorly about 6 sustainability development goals, starting from quality education, then SDG 6, which talks about clean water, industry innovation infrastructure, then sustainable cities and communities, climate action, partnership and goals, etc. The new education policy now, NEP 2020, what they are talking about also addresses the higher education part of it, and then the quality education. This particular SDG 4 is also addressed in higher education aspect of it also. So in a nutshell, this is in brief how construction industry professionals actually are connected with. And these are the things which we just talked about, construction industry sustainability development goals. And this is in a nutshell what I'm going to touch upon. This is the dashboard, the Genesis Green Construction, New Materials Sustainability Assessment. This is just, we'll cover it very briefly and may not be in the same order, but it will be this. Now let us take it a global carbon footprint level. These are the just few tables which talk to you about the global emission in gigatons. The first top 2-3 countries I've taken. China emits about 10.06 gigatons, and then USA about 5.441, etc. The pictures are very, very clear. And the global footprint of buildings, actually, if you take the raw materials, it is almost about 40 to 50%. Energy use is about 30 to 40%. Fresh water consumption is almost about 17%. When it comes to national level carbon footprint, India's total carbon dioxide emission is almost about 6 to 7% as compared to China, US, European Union, etc., all put together, which form about 61%. And now in this 6 to 7%, we have almost about 20 to 25% takes in construction industry is responsible for about 40% in total, and in that 40%, approximately about 75 to 80% of that 40% goes into operative and maintenance portion, and pre-construction phase and construction phases almost contribute to about 20 to 25%. Now in this 20 to 25%, which actually is the construction phase and then the pre-construction phase, is the most neglected phase. So this is where the green construction, the sustainable construction, all the things come into the picture, and this is where we need to address it extremely high. As we will see, Suresh sir did mention about NBC indirectly, but the recent National Building Code 2016 Part 11 approach to sustainability talks about 10 elements of sustainable construction design parameters. You will be wondering how these elements are so beautifully, they encompass almost all elements of sustainability, starting from inclusive approach, but not in parts. That means the whole design has to be holistic, and then the use of technological advancements have to be taken care into consideration. Buildings as material banks, the new construction, the green construction, or the sustainable construction has to keep in mind that the buildings have to be serve as material banks, and then the minimum natural resource consumption has to be there. The quantify and manage the impact, which talks about the assessment, and then performance versus benchmarking. Benchmark values, establishing benchmark values, extremely important, because then we have a benchmark to compare our existing buildings. Otherwise, we just keep comparing it with nothing, but then we don't have a yardstick to measure, or we don't have a goal. Then acceptable to climatic zone, and then the geological conditions, because we have different climatic zones in India itself, and every local condition is different. So there is a considerable need of the hour is to develop sustainability development index with respect to every climatic zone, and then with respect to every geological condition. Human and health, Suresh sir already talked about it. Then we also need one thing which we keep on forgetting, which we don't talk about, is the locked in environmental impact. Carbon dioxide, which has emitted about 60 years previously, is still in the air, and then the greenhouse gas emission has a locked in impact on us. So today, if I design a building with a life cycle, I mean, the design period of about 60 years, and I don't take the greenhouse gases into consideration, we will not be doing justice into our design. So we need to consider this locked in period or the environmental impact and make use of the traditional wisdom and design. I applaud the team behind, and then Suresh sir, about the National Building Code 216, which is included in this. Really laudable, and these are actually form the foundations of the sustainable design and then the green construction. The trade-off between the choice of materials, which Suresh had talked about it, and the technologies and their effect on environment has to be balanced with the aim of a closed loop system. All these 10 elements, what we just discussed, can be put under 6 categories from the execution viewpoint. And these the 6 categories which we need to see is it of course involves the space and structural design, that is the optimization of the space and also optimization of the structural elements. All those things come into the picture, and then the conventional and then the alternative materials which talk about it, sustainability assessment which comes into the picture, construction technology, building automation, and then construction mechanization, which also was referred by both the speakers prior to me. And then this is extremely important. And then the inclusion of the artificial intelligence, which also is come to the picture. Now further, we also need in the principles, we need to consider what exactly are the current and the future trends of the whole construction industry. It may be the future trend or the current trend is slowly tending towards the future trend. We have to focus on low energy buildings. High rise buildings, especially in urban scenario, are going to be inevitable. There will be a passive architecture focus. Precast buildings, as already mentioned, pre-engineering buildings, monolithic, modular, building automation comes into the picture. Then ergonomic buildings also come into the picture. These all will be complemented with 3D printing, drones, Internet of Things, sustainability assessment, green rating systems. And then Suresh sir also told us about the green construction ratings which come into the picture, then BIM, then artificial intelligence, the new codes which are still yet to materialize and then manifest at national level in Indian circumstances. So all these things actually have to understand the current and future trends, mechanisms, advancing technologies, use them in achieving sustainable development. Now, the next what we relate is, we also need to keep in mind what exactly are the emerging trends or the current construction technologies and then the methodologies. We already talked about pre-engineered buildings. We have composite structures, monolithic, slip forming, jump forming, tilt-up technologies, and then precast buildings. Then the future construction technologies which are eminent. All these things have to come into the picture, have to be kept in mind, and then a balance has to be struck. And that is the discretion, true discretion of the engineers and the architects, all the construction professionals who actually come into the picture. Now, another important aspects now we have to keep in mind is the linear construction which we have been already following. That is going to be out now from henceforth. That the linear construction which had the principle take, make, use, and then discard is not going to be there. The focus will be on circular construction. Suresh sir mentioned about cradle to grave, but I would like to go one more step ahead. It has to be a cradle to cradle construction, construction, which we refer it as a circular construction, where the products and then the assets are designed and built to be more durable and to be repaired, and then the whole dismantled structure the material has to be reused, and then that is how we get the circular effect of circular construction and the cradle to cradle. Then the more sustainability and the more green aspect of the construction comes into the picture without much impacting the environment. Now the buildings as material banks, this is a new concept which has come into the picture, the BAM, buildings as material banks, every possible component that goes into the building, that gets used into the building, is not taken from just from the natural resource and then forgotten, but it has to be used as a locker for the natural materials, natural resources. And that is where this concept of buildings as material banks has come into the picture. Now, before really getting into the understanding of principles and their application, we need to understand a very important few of the important phenomena. The earlier speakers also talked about the construction period. During the entire life cycle of a period, we all know that the operation and then maintenance period approximately comes to about 75 to 80% of the covers the 80% of the span. Now, whereas the pre-construction phase and then the construction phase almost formulates or constitutes about 25 to 30% part of it. Now, this is, as I already said, the neglected phase, which is the construction phase. I say it is big because it is during this construction phase the maximum amount of embodied energy or the energy, high intensive energy activities take place. And it is this period where the carbon spike happens. That is because enormous material gets used during the period of about 2 to 3 years, and extremely high quantum of greenhouse gases get generated, and there is a phenomena what is called as carbon spike, which gets highlighted during the construction phase. So in the other though the high energy consumption is much higher in the operating and maintenance period, but it is actually distributed over a long period of the design life, say about 60 to 70 years. So when you compare it to the construction phase and the operation phase, the construction phase has to be given utmost care, and we need to address, and that becomes the need of the hour. The other important aspect is operating maintenance phase. Most of the gadgets what we use now are almost streamlined. Most of the items, most of the gadgets are almost very high efficiency, have been achieved, and then we need to focus on the construction period, on the construction phase, where the life cycle analysis becomes extremely critical. Now, we also need to keep the new generation materials which are actually coming into the picture. We have new generation materials, huge amount of them. I mean, we can't just discard them for the sake of green. So they are efficient, they are more responsible, they contribute extraordinarily to the objective what we, there are bendable, whole lot of new generation materials which come into the picture. We have 3D graphene, basalt rods, intelligent fixtures, formed aluminum, facade panels. All these materials which we see have become order of the day, and then they are going to be a part of our new generation construction and future construction also. We need to consider the new generation materials into picture. We need to consider lot of other effects and their impacts and then their possibilities taking into consideration while designing a sustainable construction or a sustainable structure and the green structure. Now, these are the resources efficiency, what we look for while material selection comes into the picture. Material properties, durability, recyclability and recycled content, which was already talked about, reusability, manufactured from waste, minimum package, locally acquired, consume less energy, ready to use, renewable energy, water efficient, energy efficiency, and also from the human health point of view, they should, low emission of greenhouse gases and low maintenance, no VOC emissions, manufactured using renewable energy, moisture resistant, free toxic chemicals, less pollution. All these things actually come into the picture, have to be taken into consideration while for the material construction. Now, when we come to when we start looking at the sustainability assessment itself, what are the things we need to take it into consideration? We have quite a few life cycle analysis which come into the picture. Then the green rating systems come into the picture. As we talk, the sustainability development index, which is geographical and then climatic condition based, they come into the picture. Material engineering comes into the picture with climatic conditions, eco indicators, material properties, then the buildings as bank materials, alternative materials, recycled materials, all these things have to be integrated. And then that is why sustainability engineering is not just simple to use just some alternative materials and then say that we have achieved green buildings or we have achieved sustainability buildings. It is far more complicated. Otherwise, at the rate at which we are going, the estimation is that by 2050, we need another planet Earth, which is not possible. That is why we have a great amount of responsibility on our shoulders. So we need to take, then we also have, while taking into consideration, I just remember, we have energy building codes, energy conservation building code, which was there in 2007, which focused on commercial buildings. And then now we also have ECBC 2017, for commercial, and then Eco-Nivas for residential buildings also have come into the picture. I don't have much details about it, but we can do all these things into consideration. While then we now have, when we start talking about the assessment part of it, we will now start focusing on the materials. It is possible, there is no single, as we know, that there is no single material which will go as a standalone component in the building construction. For that matter, whether it's a conventional building or a sustainable building or green construction, it cannot go as a standalone material, but it has to go as a matrix. So we, at the first level itself, we have from the embodied energy point of view, from the embodied carbon point of view, there is a possibility, there is an acceptable criteria for materials also. We can do that. Just for the example, I have a component from the material chart. I've taken for the metals. There is the methodology called figure of merit, which actually is a non-dimensional parameter, which is extensively used in engineering and then other fields. And then when we compare embodied energy and then the figure of merit, when we use these two components, actually it is possible to identify in the perspective of embodied energy and the figure of merit, which material is going to be useful, which material is going to be better, we will be able to understand. These, for example, from the metal point of view, I have taken stainless steel, brass, aluminum, and steel. So steel, for example, falls in the, it has got low figure of merit, and also it has got less embodied energy. So it falls into the first quadrant. So like this, we can actually identify materials from all the materials from different material charts, and then arrive at acceptability criteria for the materials also, for the individual materials, what I'm talking about. Now, when this also can be, this methodology can also be applied for a particular system. Now, as an example, I've taken formwork as the system, which let us look at that. Now we need to understand what in front of you is the components of the conventional formwork. Now, conventional formwork, there is you don't have embodied energy for the conventional formwork. You don't have embodied energy for the either the plywood system or the aluminum monolithic system. We don't have those things. Everything has to be calculated as a matrix. So, for example, how do we calculate for a particular matrix or for a particular activity? Let us take conventional formwork. In the conventional formwork, we all know that these are the components which we have these components, centering sheets, the floor plates, we have spans, jacks and props, etc. We need to calculate the total weight of it and then calculate the total embodied energy. We understand that approximately the conventional system has got about 195 kg per square meter of the weight. And then when you actually convert that into embodied energy and compare it with all the three formwork systems, we find absolutely aluminum formwork is the least impact, has got least impact from the formwork point of view. It's amazing, isn't it? Aluminum has got, from the only embodied energy perspective, Only aluminum, if you take as a material or as a metal, it has got extremely high embodied energy. But so then that becomes non-sustainable. But when you use aluminum as a material and as a part of the formwork matrix, it becomes extremely sustainable. Why? Because of when you start analyzing it, the aluminum formwork from its reusable point of view, from the recyclability point of view, from the lightweight point of view, and from the handling point of view, from productivity point of view, from repetitions point of view, aluminum formwork scores far ahead than the plywood and then the conventional formwork. The other important aspect of it, when you trade off this against the plastering activity, where the major component of a natural resource is saved, it becomes extremely important. And then hence it falls into the ambit of the construction professional, either the designing engineer, which discretion he has to take place. And of course, there is an economic aspect of it. There has to be a minimum square feet for the aluminum work to be more usable and all these things. So similarly, the material is possible. Now let us look at the sustainability assessment, because today's topic, the focus is on the tagline. If you remember, it is assess and mitigate. So I would like to focus on the assessment part of it. Now I have taken as a case study for a high-rise building. Now we have three very standard life cycle analysis part of it. We have embodied energy, where the assessment is based on the energy consumption, and where in embodied carbon, where the from cradle to grave, where it is based on the GHG's emission, and we have the sustainability development index algorithm that is based on the eco indicators, embodied energy, embodied carbon, and other several eco indicators integrated together. So in that, among the three things, embodied energy and embodied carbon have got their own limitations, because they don't consider several other eco indicators to make the building more sustainable, or to give you a clear assessment of the built environmental impact on the natural environment. So let us go ahead with this. I mean, this is the case study which is taken into consideration, and which is about 18 floors, RCC frame, 25,000 square meters of area, solid concrete block point. And these are the things which have come into the picture, which you can see. And these are the quantities which have been categorized into several, into these many primary parameters. It can be parametered, like there are about 11 to 12 parameters which are can be categorized, and then they essentially form the major components of any construction part of it. Then we need to calculate, for example, this is from the bill of quantities which has been taken and calculated per square meter, and then per square meter embodied energy. I don't go into the details of how do we calculate embodied energy, how do we, that requires hell of amount of time, but it is possible to calculate based on, this is what, please remember, all this is possible at the building information, the bill of quantities stage itself. So similarly, we can calculate the embodied energy, which comes to about 5,200 megajoules per square meter, and then they can be represented in a P chart. Here you can see, very interesting to see, is concrete and steel components, the impact is quite huge even from embodied energy perspective. The next embodied energy, from the embodied energy perspective, the next environmental impact is from the formwork, which we have completely neglected, which doesn't come into any of the analysis at all. All other things which are about 2%, 3%, joineries become 1%, are actually become extremely negligible, but we can still play a role, but the whole focus has to be on 3 or 4 items. And from the, what does it mean? What does it mean from the point of view or the economics part of it? Embodied energy, we calculated about 5.186 gigajoules per square meter, which actually translates into 13 crore megajoules. At the rate of 3.64 megajoules per kilowatt or the 1 unit, we have about 3.56 crore units, which is equivalent. And the embodied energy component in this particular building of the case study approximately works out to be about 29 crores. Now, the we already talked about, we also discussed the benchmark which has to be established in the initial stages. The benchmark building, for example, it has got an embodied component worth of 20 crores. Hence, the saving could be to the extent of about 9 crores as compared to the benchmark. For example, the benchmark, the project, what can be considered as 3,500 megajoules per square meter as against 5,200 megajoules what we are seeing. So similarly, what we can calculate actually for the same area, for the same building, from the embodied carbon component point of view, which comes to about 483 kg CO2e per kg, and we can actually draw similar amount of similar kind of P charts, and then analysis can be actually done from the same basis, and then economically we can actually also arrive at a component of saving component of about 6 crores. So these are very interesting things which per square meter can be calculated, and what materials can contributes. See, once we go back to this from the embodied energy perspective, from the embodied carbon perspective, when we arrive at that, and then when we juxtapose them along with the primary parameters, we actually understand how each parameter actually contributes to the embodied energy, or which contributes to the detrimental impact. See, for example, if you see from the, sorry, I've gone back to the previous slide. See, for example, concrete here in this reinforcement concrete has got 2,225 megajoules per square meter. And whereas all other contribution, if you see, look at the plastering part of it, which has got wooden doors, for example, has got a contribution of only 36.31. So this gives an indication where do we have to concentrate. For example, reinforcement has got 849 is the contribution, and for example, formwork has got a contribution of 600. So these are the parameters which we will understand at the conceptual stage, even before the execution of the project itself. So when the bill of quantity is ready, we need to understand which parameter actually plays an important role, or probably a detrimental role, and then accordingly we can actually arrive at the calculation of the material and the methodology that can be chosen. Now we have a third method which we were talking about, which is the Sustainability Development Index. Now this Sustainability Development Index is a far more realistic assessment and the analysis as compared to embodied energy and embodied carbon only, because this also encompasses the impact caused by the embodied energy and embodied carbon. But in addition to that, almost it includes and then integrates about direct and indirect independent eco indicators, about 28 eco indicators. So some of them, they include material properties. You know, none of the analysis, for example, embodied energy or embodied carbon, they don't consider the material properties into consideration at all. Whereas material properties, for example, density of the material, Young's modulus of the material is extremely important for the structural design and then the optimization of the structural elements which come into the picture. Say, similarly, cost of water, several other embodied energy and embodied energy coefficients become into the picture. And then once we have this perspective into the picture, how do we actually arrive at it? How do we analyze at it is a very complicated process. And then we need to we have embodied energy components, we have material matrix, which we discussed about. Then we have the greenhouse gases, which are already locked into the period. So whenever the construction happens, if we just don't build some things, but we are responsible for the interaction of all these materials. So what is actually the Sustainability Development Index does is it engrosses and encompasses the entire aspect of all these interactions and then arrive at the some level of the interaction. These are some of the mathematical equations which have been calculated, which we arrive at a non-dimensional picture of SDI, and then let me not go into the details of it, but these are actually the mathematical model which comes into the picture. Now this mathematical model, when we arrive at the analysis of this model, it also gives rise to a mitigation strategy, where we understand the mitigation strategy as only adapt, assess, and then decarbonize, which we will quickly go into the things. Now, from the, like we calculated, like we analyzed embodied energy, and then from the embodied perspective, we also can analyze, this is the kind of a table what you have for every primary parameter that goes into the buildings. You also have two extreme readings or the components low and high, because you have the low range and high range of embodied energy and the Young's modulus. Yeah.
Sorry, Ajit, another 2 or 3 minutes probably, please.
Yeah, absolutely fine. So this is, I'll just quickly rush through. So sure. This is what happens. And then similarly, we can analyze it from the embodied energy perspective and from the embodied carbon, and then the distribution of the primary parameters. So similarly, this whole, what we saw was for one building. The whole thing can be actually extrapolated to a cluster of buildings, to gated communities, to cities, etc. And we can actually calculate, apply statistical measures, and then arrive at standard deviation, variance, and which will give rise for us to classify the buildings, whether it is in a gated community, whether it is an individual building, as highly sustainable, moderately sustainable, least sustainable, and non-sustainable. And we can actually classify them and put them in a graph. So we can understand where our project lies and where is, to what extent we can adopt mitigation strategies to come and bring down. The bottom line, what you see here is actually the benchmark. So we need to, where the projects what are lying, the triangular portions. So all those projects actually can be, mitigation strategies can be adopted and brought level as close as possible, so that we can save, reduce the impact strategies. So this also happens to the cluster of projects. And then this is the last part of the mitigation strategies. And when we come to the mitigation strategies, we need to adopt, because as design, and then that is simply because the climate change has already taken place. We already have the locked in period of about 40 to 50 years. We need to parallelly adapt ourselves. We have already talked about the assessment part of it. And how do we decarbonize in the construction, actual execution part of it? We have energy efficiency, low carbon and clean energy. All these factors have to be accounted for. And these are some of the things, I think, due to paucity of time, we will not be able to go through all the mitigation strategies, what exactly are to be adopted, which we have no other choice than adapting to the existing this thing. And then the decarbonization strategies, we need to adopt and then reduce fossil fuel, increase carbon sinks, all these, then re-engineering low energy materials, etc., low carbon economy. All these aspects have to be taken into consideration. So with this, I think I have come to
we do you a very, very major disservice by expecting you to gauge this entire discussion into less than 30 or 35 minutes. All of you students and the faculty, if your feedback suggests that you want to know more on those specific aspects that he can dilate upon in far greater detail, we can invite Dr. Ajit Sabnis once again, but we need feedback from you. Feedback from you has also suggested that we clip the time to 60 minutes as we have done in this session. You have also said that you want to know more of the what and the how of doing things, as Dr. Sabnis presented today, and our Mr. V. Suresh also did. This is the 13th in the Living Building series. We have the next edition coming up, 2 Saturdays from now on September 26th. And that one will be on the DNA of innovations from a leader who has curated and supported over 25 such companies who have come up with unique innovations that have succeeded on the marketplace. They're all looking at transformation and not just incremental change in green energy. Sureshji, for you, over the next 2 or 3 minutes for you. Yes, please.
I will take only 3 minutes. I should have started off in my presentation about the most important aspect which I missed. I don't want to miss that now. The most important document that has been mentioned by Dr. Ajit Sabnis is the important comment of Part 11 approach to sustainability in the National Building Code. Part 11 over there. Everybody should know that this is a document which came in 1 year after Sustainable Development Goal to the year 2030 was adopted by 193 countries in September 2015. 2016, this document was brought out under the chairmanship of our revered Dr. P.C. Jain Saab. So this document is the first document anywhere in the world on sustainability in the built environment sector. And I want to continue to tell that many are getting inspired from other parts of the world to see how best they can write out a document in the building code on that. I thought I should recognize the amazing contribution Dr. Jain Saab could give, and he had the vision to get this written. And when this idea came, immediately as NBC's leadership that we have, we agreed that this chapter should be included, whether it is available in other parts of the world or not. We were the one did it. I just thought the right time for me to place on record the significant contribution that Dr. Prem Singh brought
Thank you.
on the approach to sustainability chapter. Thank you.
I have one question only, and out of deference to the person who asked the question, Ajit, and for the importance of the question itself, let me ask this of you. You know, he says, Padma Padmanabhan says that in actual practice, all such discussions and strategies appear to center only around economic considerations, with social and the ecological benefits considered only as an afterthought. How do we ensure that such eco-effectiveness is actually followed in practice is his question. What's your response to that, Ajit?
Instead of focusing on arriving at a solution only based on embodied energy and embodied carbon, we need to take the Sustainability Development Index approach, which actually includes the whole bunch of things.
But as a consulting professional, how do you manage to do that with your clients? If I'm a builder, how do you convince me to do that?
Oh, it's a very hard nut to crack.
Okay. Are you saying, therefore, that most of these things remain theoretical and academic?
No, I don't say that. But a lot of awareness has to be brought in that is to be recorded. I know a lot of consultants, structural consultants, who still feel that using a recycled steel is still, not gets a preference against the virgin steel, irrespective of the properties being the same. I mean, this kind of a mindset has to change, but it is definitely changing. It is definitely changing.
I agree. I agree with you. It's 7:01. We will probably take another minute or two. One more minute for you, Sureshji, to step back and tell these students and faculty as to what they ought to be doing in their classrooms.
I think it's a very important aspect in
1
the
minute.
curriculum.
Just
the curriculum
maybe
on
two.
construction practices, especially students that they have all the books on construction practices. Very less is taught on that, and there's more bookish. This is a good opportunity for you to do what is the right way of doing the construction practice, from starting from the foundation to the superstructure, and what are all the important aspects in the processes that we have to take.
No. I just want 2 sentences from you to tell them in a way that they will remember for the next 5 years as to what they should be doing.
I think all of them should become IGBC accredited professionals.
No, that doesn't help. Just certification does not help. We all know.
They will get. This is not
critically. What helps is that they have to think through their process. You know, there are questions here from students which say green building is more expensive. They are not applying their mind. They are making this an excuse.
That myth has to be demolished.
No, it's not just a myth. It's just the way you think through processes. Ajit, can you give us 2 lines as a message for students?
As he said, as Ajit said, we are not talking in terms of the construction process as a new product, but you think of this investing in future.
Absolutely. He said not to build a structure, but to build the future. You're right.
So that's the first major thing they can take it forward. We are talking in terms of all the resources. For example, this generation of their students are all 20s there. By then they get into 40s and 60s, next generation will come. You got to have all the material. You talked about the river. You
Yes.
talk about the sand. You
Yes.
won't have all that there. So
Exactly.
unless you take the right steps now on green construction, you can. I gave a mark of only 5 out of 10 on this green construction aspect. Even the best possible construction company and even the owners. So therefore, we got to raise it up. Maybe for
Absolutely.
the first time you have brought this topic. I have acknowledged it, and I'm telling you, I'm recognizing that.
Sure.
Green construction has never ever been discussed in this country. This is the first time it's discussed over there. So we got to take it forward in a large way. If you want more and more of construction companies,
I
more
agree.
and more corporates to come into it, we have to get an
Absolutely.
increasing level of 3 A's: awareness, appreciation, application. Three.
Agree.
Yeah.
Ajit,
Sir,
your turn.
I have one last point. It's actually, we need to focus this on, take this on a very large scale and in a very serious manner to the academic levels.
Right.
Because even the faculty who teach this have to be, ultimately it is that faculty, it is that teaching faculty which actually bridge the gap between the industry and this thing. So it becomes, I have been involved in student mentoring program.
Got it. I agree with you.
This
I
thing.
agree with you.
So
Now,
there is
yeah.
absolutely
Sorry.
not
Sorry,
much.
Ajit, from all that you spoke about today, what is that one single thing that you think, if I'm a student or a practicing engineer in a builder company, what is that one thing that you want me to take away today?
Think about the long-term effect of the impact of the building on the environment, on the future, and just don't think only about the monetary aspect of it.
Are you saying that therefore, if the cost is more, the builder should be willing to pay for it?
No,
He will
it
not.
doesn't
He will
cost
be more.
more.
It will not be
We are
correct.
saying that it may not cost less, but it
Exactly.
will not cost more.
Absolutely.
But on the overall, so far the experience is between
Yes.
the sustainable, the green and the conventional building, there is
Yes.
definitely an amount of about 20 to 25% saving when you take throughout the design life of the building.
Thank you. That's a lovely message.
I
To all
think
of you
that-
out there, please remember there is a massive saving. Go on, Suresh. Yes,
I
please.
use that one word.
Yes,
Green
please.
construction aim to create balance between what we seek to build. That's what's happening. And
Yes.
what our environment can ultimately support. Take that word.
Oh,
We are all
that's-
doing what
that's
we
right.
seek to build.
But
At the end of
to
it-
these young professionals, I will only add to what you said, Suresh, that by going the way that today both these stalwarts spoke to you all about, you will actually be saving money if you think through it smartly enough.
Absolutely.
That is the message that they are both offering you. Yeah,
Because the environment has got the biggest cost.
absolutely.
As Paddu has rightly raised.
Yes, of course. And so, well, there are people who are doing thesis dissertations where not a single word, green can't be used, sustainability cannot be used as a word, eco and ecological efficiency cannot be used, and yet they are doing strategic approaches to their dissertations today among architects and among engineers. So the key is not green and sustainable. The key is how you make yourself resource smart and how you become smart professionals
The
yourself.
green concession rating will help. Thank you.
Absolutely. 706. Thank you so much, both of you. My pranams to both of you for having given
Thank you,
us
sir.
time. Wonderful
Thank you,
learning
Suresh,
from
sir.
you both. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Chandra, always a pleasure to be in
Absolutely.
your.
Thank you so much for
For you
being there.
anytime. For you anytime.
Great privilege. Thank you. Bye.
I'll
Bye-bye.
catch up with you, Suresh, sir, later.
Yeah. I already sent my comments to you on your
Absolutely.
WhatsApp.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, all of you out there. And the next building series is on September 26th.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you, Hariharan, sir. Thank you for the wonderful moderator. Yeah.
Thank you.